The last true corporate job I had, uh, I was just absolutely miserable. Good people, just company was going through issues. If you are not in a business really defining out your own story, really defining out what your differentiators are, your unique position, everything about your story, what makes your company different, you're missing the opportunity right now. Every time they had invested in customer experience, it didn't pay off. Well, I mean, that shouldn't be a campaign. That should be something that
Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow and scale your business. In this episode, I had a very interesting discussion with the Kenneth, Kinney, international keynote speaker known as a shark. He's the adrenaline-fueled shark divers and ocean conservationist who turns risk, curiosity, and unknown into life-changing lessons above and below the waves. He's also a host of top-ranked a Shark Perspective podcast featuring celebrity guests, business legends, and stories that ignite real change. Plus, he helps the National Speaker Association's Speakernomics show dishes insider strategy to level up your game. With over 1,000 winning presentations across industries, founder of two multi-million-dollar companies, and a media marketing and a sales innovator advising top brands, he is also a recruiting powerhouse building high-performance teams, former radio and TV host and stand-up comic, and a lifelong martial artist. Self-defense instructors with the MMA scars, blending dojo discipline with the professional mastery. This was very interesting and engaging discussion with Shark. We talked about various topics on the business leadership, some of the challenges business leaders are up against and some of the opportunities. Shark is very, strategy driven. He's great at telling stories and he's very logical and clear when he's trying to walk us through his insights, what he learned over the years. We talk about what's the story behind how he got the name Shark, and most importantly, what he learned from sharks and also what he learned from ocean, and how these concepts could be applied in a business environment and team environment to build your teams and scale your business and scale your revenue. Hope you find this discussion interesting as much I did. Only have one ask before we go. I recently find that only 33% people who watch our content, they subscribe to our channel. If you're finding a value from this discussion, don't forget to send us your feedback, share with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, please welcome Kenneth, Kinney, Shark. Hi guys, welcome to a Business Leadership Podcast. Today our guest is Kenneth, Kinney, Shark. Kenneth, I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the podcast.
absolutely honored to be here and glad to serve.
So very interesting name, Shark, Kenneth. If you just walk our audience through, how did you get the name Shark, and what's the story behind that?
Well, it's not a brand play. This has been a nickname of mine since I was a little kid. And early on in my life, I saw a shark out in the water off a boat and was far too deep for where I should have been at that age, and came, I'd say, face to face, figuratively speaking, up close with a predator shark. I learned later, and it really became a fascination. I became fixated on and just absolutely loved everything about sharks. It was, for lack of a better phrase, way we hear this all the time, my spirit animal. And it's something I have translated from that early age into a real passion into swimming and diving with sharks anytime and everywhere I can. I just got back from another trip in Hawaii and was diving off the North Shore with sharks, but I scuba dive often with sharks, especially in Florida and the Bahamas. And I've been honestly all over the world being able to do this. But it is a true passion, and luckily it doesn't hurt from a brand perspective, because luckily there's not a lot of people nicknamed Shark that actually swim with sharks that have a strong corporate background or a speaker brand like I do. But it's been something that I will do regardless of personal branding or not. It's my happy place in the water, and sharks are very, very misunderstood. Most people, because of this, movie that's now 50 years old, Jaws, viscerally, it grabbed everybody. And they are not puppy dogs. You do have to have a massively healthy respect. I don't go in there and play, and you see plenty of videos with stupid people touching them the wrong way. I mean, you don't go into a safari park and run up to the first lion you see, or a gorilla or anything else and just think that's, a puppy dog to play with. Sharks the exact same way. You are in their territory, but it is one of the most massively humbling things you'll ever see, and it's so misunderstood. And really, it's become a pretty substantial metaphor because, especially in the marketing and advertising and sales, most brands so misunderstand marketing and true sales and what to do with it correctly. And so that's been a nice little metaphor for me. And it's something I like to do, every weekend I can is get in the water.
That is a very interesting story. I never met anybody with the name Shark for sure. Um, so I when I was researching a little bit about you, I saw a shark perspective. So what is a shark's perspective?
So the last true corporate job I had, I was just absolutely miserable. Good people, just company was going through issues, but I knew that I needed to start back into my personal branding because I had been on TV and radio before. I'd had other podcasts before, but I started this show called A Shark's Perspective, and mainly, I was the shark, if you will. That was the brand around it, was my perspective on looking at business, sales, operations, marketing, customer experience, customer service, all those kind of things that make businesses grow. And so I started that show about, gosh, it's been maybe 6, 7 years ago. It's been on hiatus for a year, but I have a bunch of episodes and about to re-release it. I've had some amazing people on the show, Seth Godin and Guy Kawasaki, and I think Neil Patel's been on a couple times, Martin Lindstrom, some of the biggest, marketing and business and sales names in the world. I've been very lucky to have a few ocean friends, if you will. Is occasionally I'll bring on somebody like Ocean Ramsey's been on, um, Stuart Cove, a lot of those folks. I've had a few celebrities on. I think of like Annie Duke, who is a world poker champion that was on the Celebrity Apprentice and came in second place. There's been a few of those kind of folks, but it's been a very, it allowed me at that point to really um, reframe what I was wanting to do in marketing and sales rather than the corporate world that I felt trapped in. And so it helped me develop my own philosophy a little bit more. And it's one of the reasons I always encourage people to start their own podcast because it does allow you to develop your thought leadership as opposed to, yeah, I'm sure it's made you a much more knowledgeable business person running your
Sure.
own podcast. You've been extremely successful with this. The more that you do it, it allows you to build a philosophy. I use that phrase a lot, as opposed to just being a talking head interviewing people. That's never what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. So what I try to do often is approach it from, and there's some behavioral science as well as marine biology science behind this, of looking at things from a different perspective. And one example I'll quickly say is, when you are in the water scuba diving, for example, and see a shark, you only look at it from, oh my gosh, it's this, predator coming at me. And then it could turn out that it's a little cat shark that's this long. It could be something teeny tiny. But the way you view it and the way the shark views it is much different. And so that sort of became a weird little metaphor, if you will, to the way I thought businesses perceive what they're saying to customers versus what customers say back to them from experience, from reviews, from whether or not they buy again, whatever. And it just sort of became this, odd little metaphor for me.
Very interesting. Yeah, because you looking at two different angles and with their own perspective, and you definitely look at differently from what angle you're looking at.
Well, most people always look at it from themselves. And You know, one of the Dale Carnegie wrote, this is not how to win friends and influence people. It's in a different writing of his, but he made a very simplistic point that I'll completely butcher up. But he said, people care about themselves, and they care about themselves morning, noon, and night, and that's so incredibly true. And we do all this
Mhm.
stuff in marketing and sales and what we do, but it's often not customer centric. It's not customer focused nearly enough. And it's a big reason that I think a lot of times people fail. You see big companies quite often doing all these other things except making their product or service remarkably better for their customer. That silly analogy, as I was just talking about it yesterday, and I'm getting hungry for one, is Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, their sandwiches, their iced tea, their biscuits, they've been ranked number one for like 9 or 10 straight years.
Yeah.
You don't see them or care about their social media. You hear about I remember going to some and speaking at so many different digital marketing conferences. You hear everybody praising Wendy's snarky Twitter feed, which is funny. So is KFC, which only follows 11 people because of its 11 herbs and spices. That's they would do these silly things and they focus so much. I heard McDonald's has a new Happy Meal for adults. That's great. But you know what companies like Chick-fil-A are doing, just from an example in food, is they're making their chicken sandwiches better continuously. They're always
Focus on.
providing great customer experience. They're actually talking to people when you go into the store, unlike a lot of stores. And so those kind of things are why they are often, for like the last 10 years, basically ranked number one, as opposed to all this other stuff that we do. Now, that's a silly fast food analogy, but it's the same principle can apply to any kind of product or service marketing.
Yeah, it says that that is the key. If you focus more on a customer itself or the product itself, and you keep re-engineering and make it better for them, that there's nothing better marketing than that. If you just focus on, 'cause that's what customers are looking for. Sometimes that is the best way to do marketing. Just improve your customer service, improve your product and services, whatever you offer in the market.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you have to turn everything over to them. That's not the
Mhm.
intent either, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of uh, customer p a lot of brands get lost in trying to argue against. If we do all this, the more I have a friend of mine that was a CMO at a billion-dollar company, and she was talking about every time they had invested in customer experience, it didn't pay off. Well, I mean, that shouldn't be a campaign. That should be something that is kind of inherent in your brand, and that's what brings them back, and that should cost you nothing. So, it doesn't mean turning over everything you do just to give it all away to them, but a lot of it just is focusing what should be focused on is making your product or service better. For example, I do a lot of work in the business advisory space, but I also do a ton of work as a professional speaker. If I don't focus, I can have the best demo reel, I can have a great website, I can have all these flashy things in social media all day long. If I can't deliver a great speech, nobody is gonna hire me to come back. And so I do a lot of work, especially speaking in the corporate market, and those people don't play around. I'm brought in to provide an A-level speech. Now, I'm not perfect, and there are a lot of great speakers out there. Uh, there's only one shark, of course, but I do really focus, even then on the craft of making the speech great, my product or service that I provide to people. And the consulting I provide has to lead to sales. Otherwise, it's all for nothing. Why would they just give me, the amount of money they give me?
Yeah. Yeah, that is such a great point. So, back to what you mentioned that people think they have to give us everything, free to service to customers. My take on that is that you don't have to give your product and services away, but the human element you need to give that away. You need to service another human other side. So if you focus on a human side, you're not giving anything free. You're simply making it. It's a more of a relationship, more of a connection, more of a service as a human instead of providing service or software or a hardware free. If you focus on that, you didn't give anything free, but you provide amazing experience that will stay with the client for rest of the life.
Absolutely. And it doesn't really take that much. I mean, I know this is going to be hard a lot of times for people because it's very historically, it seems like we've gotten to a place where the bar keeps getting lowered and lowered and lowered.
Yeah.
And it's understandable, especially if, we talked earlier. I also have a pretty substantial technology background. A developer is not necessarily always thinking about the customer. They're thinking about the problem with design and how to make the programming language fit. I mean, it's a pretty elaborate and technical puzzle that they have to fit. But if there's not somebody there who's really leading the cause from not just a fluffy, uh, we got to do everything for the customer only standpoint, but also really looking at the business part of it. And I'll give you one example of that is um, conversion rate optimization. So a lot of times with websites, with conversions, when they do that, they tend to think of what is easy to do versus what gets more of the reaction of the customer. And so when we think about conversion rate optimization, the whole point is trying to get people to click on it and take action. That sounds easy until you get to a developer who's developed a site, and now they've got to be, I'm going to use this. This is kind of a silly analogy, inconvenienced moving
Mm,
the button from here to here, and it has to be in this color, and this is different. And then you got to go have a meeting with a big team about why you should shift it. And then the marketing agency, who's a third party company, they don't like those colors.
yeah.
None of that matters to the customer. The customer never cares about the sausage making process. They care about getting their problem fixed. And it's the same as if you're sitting at home and you need your lawn care done correctly, or it's the
Yes.
same if you're a software company trying to fix something for a chief technology officer at a Fortune 100. At the end of the day, their customer is the only one that matters, and they're going to make a buying decision and tell you whether or not it's done correctly or not. You just got to be smart enough and nimble enough and quick enough to figure out, do we move in that direction? And it's not always perfect science. It's not, but the more that you listen to customers, the more you're going to have a much better chances of success.
Yeah, developers don't usually have the creativity that takes to provide the user experience or human experience on their site, right? They're
Well,
very
they
good at
have it,
coding.
but they may not want to lean into it.
Yeah, yeah. That is not something they practice. So we talked to a lot of people on your podcast, Shark. You also speak on a involved on a speaker's site, and also you work with a lot of business leaders as well. What do you say, from when you're working with all these leaders, what do you see some of the biggest challenges these people are up against? Especially we are getting into the AI era, and economically, what we're going through. Where you see some of the biggest challenges that these people up against?
So I thought for a minute we were going to need about 4 or 5 hours to discuss all that, but I will say, and the moment I was sort of noodling in my head what I wanted to say. One of the biggest issues today is obviously AI, and nobody can quite see the other side. I don't think this is um, as scary and ominous as most people see, but the problem is that most people can't see what's on the other side, and so it creates a real fear from that. I used to think that one of the biggest issues was going to be the tariffs and everything that's been going on here in the U.S. And it still has some concern for people because it creates disruption,
Mhm.
and the markets don't like that. But those markets have settled. AI, it's created some disruption that we don't know what a lot of the jobs are going to look like. And I had this in-depth conversation with a friend of mine that was a CEO of two companies, including a billion-dollar technology company, and he we brought up all these jobs that we don't know today. We have no idea what they're gonna be. They're gonna be
Mhm.
AI should be creating a lot of jobs that we don't know about. And if you think about it from this perspective, from when you came into technology, when you were a J2E developer, did you think under any circumstance whatsoever that we would have social media influencers making millions of dollars,
No.
or social media, or people that were running TikTok ads or Facebook ads? None of those jobs existed. Now, the problem was that so much momentum was going with computers and where it's gone, and it's taking this weird speed bump that we're gonna have to figure out. But the good part is that those jobs were created, and if you'd asked people during the invention of electricity or anything else, they would have called you blasphemous and witches and everything else back then, and that's kind of where we are because people don't know at this point how to navigate that uncertainty to see what's on the other side. So, that's honestly one of the bigger issues, and I think the other issue that we have to figure out in that interim is because of the speed of change, it could cause a different disruption, a different level of disruption with the job markets than we've seen. I don't know that for certain. I'm waiting to see what happens a little bit more, but it could cause a spike in unemployment, and obviously we see that with developers. There are things that I do now on my own with ChatGPT and Perplexity and some of the AI engines that I would have hired certain developers for before. Now I'm writing I'm not having to brush off my old HTML skills. I'm just asking ChatGPT, for example, to help me write the HTML and CSS, and I'm done in 5 minutes. And it's
Yeah.
bananas how amazing that is done. But I also think about some of the people I knew. They were typical consultants that were charging $250 an hour, for example, to do all this, all that kind of website work before you. So they'll move on. We'll all move on. We'll figure out what this is, like any other disruption in history. But I think we've got to figure out a place to where um, we can figure out what the employment situation is going to be, because the other disruption that will come as part of this, at least for the short term, as someone loses a job, they may have the time to retool themselves. But it's hard to tell somebody who's
Mm.
65, who's near employment, they're going to lose their job and they got to go retool at, 70 years old or whatever, when they've got a
Yeah.
few more years they need to work. Or it's hard to tell somebody who has, multiple kids in private schools or college or whatever, and they're just trying to make their mortgage and everything else, then they lose their job. That kind of disruption pulls away not
Hmm.
just a job from a person, but also two things. One, it affects the whole family's economy, and there could be a disruption there, because every job that takes away, or sorry, every job that AI has taken away, it will also, at least in the short term, interrupt the consumers market, the consumption market that we have, especially here in the US, because so much of the world is for us is driven by consumer, goods that are bought and sold here. The other is it takes away a lot of purpose, and I've talked to a lot of people that own companies as well that are somewhat nervous, and they don't know, for a lot of people, especially males, middle-aged males especially, identify with their jobs, and they identify way too much. Part of it is getting them away from identifying all that purpose and not being able to navigate the job, because if AI takes away their job, it takes away for a lot of them what their purpose is, and that's where a lot of this fear is coming from.
Whether you are programmer, whether you're a marketer or you're a lawyer, you think there's a potential that it can increase human productivity to the different level that we couldn't do as a humans?
Absolutely. No, I mean, what from an individual standpoint, if you embrace the technologies, if you embrace it today, let me put it this way, I am a little worried about long term. Are we ever gonna write code anymore? Or is all of the AI gonna write new code? Like, you think about all the new programs and languages and databases that came up over the last 30 years. It's amazing all the stuff we've invented. I don't know, and I heard a data scientist futurist talk about this. Like, is all the code basically now written, and are we gonna be lazier in writing new stuff going forward? That could be some of it. However,
What
uh
my take would be what
yeah,
my take of the code would be, Shark, is the basic code. If you're still writing "Hello World" or simple examples, yeah, that definitely gonna replace that with the AI, and it's probably gonna do better job than somebody else is doing it. But the business logic we put into the code and understanding a business, what works for business and how do you intuition, that you cannot replace.
that's
That's where that skill is much higher skill than junior skill writing a very, very basic programming. So the demand for that senior skill is going to be much higher and that you cannot replace with the AI. But the junior skill set for every, same as for lawyers.
absolutely.
Entry level lawyers writing a bunch of documents, or entry level marketers writing a bunch of content. So those entry level jobs will be affected because it's going to do better job than that. But all the senior jobs where all the complex issues comes in, that you cannot replace. I think that's where is going to be more demand for those skill sets.
Well, two points to that. I'm gonna try to remember the second point by the time I get to it. Uh, first point is, I think it will obviously help us, um, achieve faster and more if, and I think this is one of the business skills I was talking to the CEO about. One of the business skills that I think all, companies are gonna need to learn is to be a lot more nimble. So much
Mm.
is done by committee anymore. It's nice when you're in a small company. A lot of the small companies, they make a decision in instantly or within a day. You
Mhm.
try doing that in a large company? No. The ad campaigns I've worked on in the past, A lot of them at the Fortune 200 level took 6 months to plan, build, have all the pieces in places, make decisions, get approvals, get funding, go film a TV ad. All those things are gonna be done within, an instant. And if leaders don't understand how to make those decisions more quickly, because there's a lot of fear and hesitation. There's not a lot of brave hearts in large company roles where they're willing to stick their neck out. They're gonna have to figure out a way to be much more nimble and fast in the marketplace than they were before, because you won't have time to take 6 months to plan something, or you might as well it's, collecting dust at the speed of AI. And but to the earlier point, I'm also worried. The second point I was gonna make was, although it will help us, I hope that people don't get lazy, and I know they are, because 'cause I've talked to too many of them about it. I just ran something through. I do the paid, ChatGPT and, his model as well, and went through and asked it to create something that was a pretty elaborate plan, and it was brilliant. It came back and asked me, "Do you want me to lay this out? Do you want a storyboard? Do you want the taglines? Do you want all this stuff?" And it was fantastic. It provided a spreadsheet with all the time stamps that stuff needed to happen, and it was great. And I thought it would be very easy for me to take this, accept it, and, uh, implement it as is. And then I really went back and looked at it and thought, "No, it we can't get to the point where it just replaces us because we're so lazy. It's so convenient that it becomes easy for us to use this, but it not necessarily be right.
Yeah.
'Cause it'll
Well, it gives
never
you
measure human interaction the same way."
yeah, it gives you data at least to start good starting point, and then you put your thoughts into it and clean it up the way you want it.
Well,
I
I never use it to write anything. I've never used it. I will use it to edit and take a look at, but I never use it. I know too many people, though, that are using it to write everything, and it's a
Mhm.
little bit scary, that it could get you into trouble, because even ChatGPT cited that about they're having issues, or they had issues in ChatGPT 4 with it giving you answers or trying to make up stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's always right. It's like the internet was never always right.
Yeah, we recently posted a position hiring for a systems analyst, and 500 some people apply for it, and we simply said we're gonna start doing a one-way interview where we video record questions, like of 10 questions, and as you can take your time whenever you want. You can just answer those 10 questions before we spend time interviewing you, so we can assess where you are, so we can take it to the next step. Over a couple hundred, videos came back to us, and when we were looking at those videos, everybody had the same answer to every question.
Yeah.
A perfect answer and the same answer. So what they were doing was they were reading from a ChatGPT or some other, AI programs, and we thought, this is not what we were trying to achieve. We were trying to understand where you are in your journey of on developing a skill set, and where you are, and so we can help you provide more training and get you where we need to. But you reading that ChatGPT or some other AI program, we can't tell where you at, and so we can't assess you in that area. So that just defeats the purpose. So just one of the example that sometimes reading or from a ChatGPT or taking those answers and just running with it, it just everybody's the same has the same answer. So how do you figure out which one is right, which one is wrong? And then that's it defeats the purpose of recruiting.
I could not agree more. One of the things that it reminded me of was you were saying that too, and it kinda goes back and answers your earlier question about some of the challenges coming up, is people really have to, especially now, something I was telling you about from a SEO perspective I'm working on with me. But if you are not in a business really defining out your own story, really defining out what your differentiators are, your unique position, everything about your story, what makes your company different, you're missing the opportunity right now to fill a pretty immense void, because the way people are searching and what ChatGPT is telling, there are different, and more intrinsic digital footprints you need to create, with ChatGPT than you did with a simple Google search from
Yeah.
from before. I mean, it used to be we sort of took Google as gospel because Bing didn't do much to help themselves. But now you're looking at what the answers you get back that are driven by AI, and if you're not creating the right footprint for your unique story, a lot of companies are just going to get lost in this space. And honestly, the more that you do create that niche or category or whatever it is that you're attempting to do with your differentiation, which is a big focus for me right now, you're really missing the boat.
Yeah. I was reading one of the the leadership book and Simon Sinek, that the leadership coach. Well, you mentioned something is very interesting. What you just mentioned relate to that. He was saying that if you put something in a chat GPT or any chat program, so listen, how do I achieve this goal? It will give you 10-step. How do I do this? It'll give you 10-step plan. As you mentioned, it give you a plan. It's very good at giving you plans how to get there. But on a human side, that a journey we go through, human experience, that is, humans enjoy that experience. We are so tied to the journey. So, to back to what you were talking earlier, if you're going to be a public speaker, you gotta speak a lot, you gotta practice a lot, all of those things, little things you do practice, and then you become that very good at speaking. The plan's not gonna do much. So that going through that experience is key to the humans to develop those skill set. Just giving you plan is not going to do much, right? So, but it's good at giving you plan, at least giving you what needs to be done. But then that human experience, what we go through, that's what sharpen your skill. That's what make us who we are as a human. And I think that's where you got to differentiate. The AI is going to do this much, give you all the plans, but not going to do it for you.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, AI, especially for businesses and for any brands, will give you a well articulated position. That doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues. I used to talk about this in when I worked in the corporate world. I worked with a lot of large companies. You could find the people that were the highest ranking leaders. You would often see that the way they had achieved a lot of their ranking within a company was because of how well they could articulate their plan. Never meant it was right. There are a lot of those people who failed and lost their jobs, but the other people that complained were just complaining. So the more that you spend time not articulating your own with your human experience, as you just said, you're completely missing the boat because I don't need a plan for somebody to tell me um, w what the experience of shark diving is like. Like, that there's nothing. I don't take a lot of cameras in the water, unlike everybody else. Whenever I go on some of the, um, group barges as opposed to a boat with just friends, you'll see tourists that come and they ruin the experience by not truly experiencing it. So, you by taking just pictures all day long for Instagram. Ridiculous example, but what it means is they're not just taking the time to lean into their human experience of what it felt like, as opposed to what did it look like or what the plan looked like. I mean, those flaws that you learn, especially in the speaking world, all the mistakes I made in business were the only reason I've become a better leader. That's the only reason I could talk about leadership. I mean, I couldn't talk about leadership if it wasn't for all of the amazing success I had. I hear people talk about that all the time. No, it's because I was mean to a lot of people, too nice to some, made mistakes on timing. I mean, those are the things that a leader wants to hear, not that they were all the picture of a perfect leader. I mean,
Yeah,
Jack Welch, all these famous, business leaders, they all talk about their flaws.
there's no feedback in a success, but the failure, there's a feedback. At least you know where you failed at. In a success, there's no feedback. How do you improve something that's you already successful at?
Yeah. Well, so to go back to your original question, also, are AI tools gonna help improve us? Absolutely. There's so many, like, if you think about podcasting, for example, there's so many things you can do with AI tools you couldn't do 3 years ago. It's ridiculous how many companies have sprouted up. I can record and edit a podcast for video and audio faster, create promotional clips. That's not the problem. It's the person at home who might be listening to this who wants to start a podcast, and they don't do it. And they don't get out and articulate their vision and their story or make the comments you make on yours that, articulate what is your good position in the world on something. So I find it fascinating that a lot of human behavior doesn't change,
Yeah.
but the AI tools, if you use them, they're gonna make it faster for us.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, you involve in many different items, I should. So, where do you spend most of your time and energy these days? Is it on a podcast or on a speaking side, or helping people with the strategy side? Like, where your time and energies these days?
Well, another one that's, coming up, and I don't know when this will air, but it's something I started to a year and a half ago, but I've gone through 2 years of this, is I also started a conference of my own. So I had worked in I had run content for a few conferences, including a digital marketing series of conferences all over the world, and was blessed to meet an owner that trusted me with pulling together great names for that. But I had gone to a lot of conferences and I'd seen, typical conference you go to. I'd spoken at a gazillion of them, and you see a lot of people who go to conferences, but they don't get great content. A lot of times they get agencies who are selling something or a speaker who is selling something, and nobody wants to hear it, and they're bad speakers.
Hmm.
So I knew what I wanted to do was put together my own conference, and I leaned into the niche that I was working on, including in home services and home improvement, which was very resilient after, uh, well, during COVID because all the money was coming back home, and then kind of lost its way a little bit with when travel opened back up and
Okay.
interest rates have been funky. But I started my own conference in the home services space called the Home Services Growth Summit. And what I've in particular done is try to eliminate a lot of the fluff that comes from the not great speaker. And I've really tried to focus on creating amazing content. So I put on a couple of events so far. The first one, I had to lean into my brand too. I wanted to do it near a beach
Okay.
just because of the shark theme, but a lot of my sponsors said we need it easier to get to. So I had the first one in Atlanta, and
Okay.
Atlanta is not known for its shark behavior except at the Georgia Aquarium. So I had my first event at the Georgia Aquarium, and I've actually been diving in the tank with the whale sharks at the Georgia Aquarium, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Then I had the second conference. I did this year, earlier this year at SeaWorld. SeaWorld has its own ballroom. They've tried to market it. Next year, I'm going to have my event at the New Orleans Aquarium. There's plenty of hotels around, but when you go to a conference, and I've been to many where I don't remember anything about. I just got back from one where I was on the main stage. I don't remember anything about the building, the conference room, or w it is they all sort of look like an airport Marriott, nothing against an airport Marriott, but they look very similar. There's not a lot. So what I've tried to do is find a great ballroom, but also find a great experience, and so people always remember when you go to things like an aquarium. It's not necessarily meant to be all aquarium speeches, but gives you a chance to see more than just the room you're in. You want it to be networking, you wanna create an environment where people come away with really good actionable items, but you also want them to feel something different. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people are not gonna remember anything you said from a stage, but they'll remember the venue, they'll remember that helps spark some of the creativity in them. So this year, I really leaned into having more professional speakers who were heavily invested in the home services and home improvement space. And that could be anything from kitchen and bath and flooring and solar and roofing and, anything with that service the home inside or just out. Lawn care, all that good stuff. Bug and pest. Ton of technology companies because that's where all the flood of things that are going on, especially with how it helps those industries. But I also had some amazingly great speakers up there, including some Hall of Fame speaker friends. And so providing that where it really sort of solidified it for me was knowing that a lot of conferences should invest more in their content. I heard from a lot of people, especially this year, best conference content they'd heard bar none, period. And I knew it was because I had better speakers up there. And
Mhm.
so it really becomes important, especially as the economy not initially changes, but we're navigating uncertainty in the markets like we talked about, that people either um, they don't want to just be entertained because I'm not a motivational fluffy speaker. They want actionable content, but they don't want a bunch of spreadsheets on a PowerPoint on a that you're not gonna remember 2 seconds later. They really want sort of a blend of that, and so that's what I'm trying to achieve. But that, along with my speaking business, running a conference and doing multiple podcasts, it eats up a lot of time. And honestly, it's, one of the fun things about my job is I get to meet people like you, get to have a conversation. I love being on podcasts because it's just a chance to kind of feel out each other's ideas and the way we look at the world.
Very interesting. So, is there more conferences this year for our schedules?
I have one for February 23rd and 24th of 2026 in New Orleans at the New Orleans Aquarium. And so I have several speaking engagements throughout the year. That is not easy, but I have certain keynotes and I do a lot of deep research with each of my clients that I provide for. But that's more of um, it's just me. And so, even when I'm sitting on the plane, I can think through my speech. Running a conference and is a whole different animal though. It's, trying to make sure that 2 to 300 people are fed and happy and they got everything they're needed. The speakers are great. The AV works properly. The venue's okay. The weather outside's not preventing, like, it just eats up so much time. So, uh,
Yeah. A lot of coordination, right? You gotta put a lot of things together.
and then you've got clients who wanna hire you to do other things. That comes up all the time, is really providing that. So I didn't mention probably the thing that I love the most, but it is very time consuming, is being a strategic business advisor. That that can take up a lot of time, but to help a company grow. I've been blessed to work with a lot of companies, especially as a consultant, and work for quite a few others permanently. I loved all the big companies I work with. I've worked on hundreds of millions of dollars of campaigns because of what I used to do and where I was, years ago. That, gave me such, pride, if you will, with a lot of the smaller companies and startups and, people that are the VC funded companies that are trying to build up quickly.
Mhm.
That is amazing to really try to help them grow. So, a lot of them don't know where to go next, and they're exploring like the rest of us. But the beauty of it is, especially with a company that's not got 40 different marketing agencies and,
Yeah.
3 different VC boards going on, it allows you to really be able to help them grow pretty quickly.
So the strategy side, Shark, is it only on the marketing side, the building strategies and all that, or is it on business operations, or what area you
All
guys
of it.
focus on?
So I've worked in call centers. I've worked a lot with technology. So I help them implement those tech stacks that they need. Look at operations and hiring because, like I was telling you, I have a pretty extensive background in recruiting and in hiring. I've hired and managed 300 people at one time. So that kind of thing helped me really get the people focus on. But a lot of it's about getting the right pieces together to help their
Mhm.
business grow. It really does take a mindset and a commitment to identify how to position your business to grow. It is not just, here's the new tool I'm going to put in place. If it was just the new tool to put in place, they can chat GPT that all day long.
Yeah.
It's really getting them in the right mindset to do it because it does take a commitment. You're talking about a lot of companies that, um, you know, most of them for the last 2 years, because of interest rates, have been worried about how to make payroll. Borrowing money has been a mess here in the States, and it was just been that way for a while. So helping them figure out, I need to commit despite the problems that I'm having with this, that, or the other, or getting my materials or whatever it is, and helping them get to, we need to make this investment in what we're doing to really truly grow. It's not just finding the right tool or whatever to implement. A lot of times it's helping them figure out how to get from here to there mentally. And that's not life coaching. I don't mean it that way, but it's really showing them, here's what you can do to get to be successful, to where the business is not running you.
Yeah, as a business owners, I can speak for my colleagues as well. I talk to a lot of them. We are so busy, solving problems on a daily basis, so busy running operationally, and when you're building a strategy or when you're trying to look ahead, there's so many blind spots, and we can't even look at, think about those blind spots. That's where we need a people like you to navigate those blind spots and get to where we need to get to, because the time is very important. So otherwise you're going to waste a lot of time learning from every mistakes. So those a lot of those blind spot, I always look for people like you that who can help you look through those blind spot and focus on a goals instead of trying to make every mistake and try to learn from it.
Well, you know this from technology. A lot of times when you're building something with this software you have in mind, it can take a lot of time to build that out. And you have a goal, you start here and you think it's gonna get here. No, it's not. It's gonna curve left and right, and it's gonna be fluid, and then you get to the point where, does this actually help the customer fix whatever we need to fix so that we can go to market and sell it and make millions and all, retire in Bali and wherever else? No, we miss that over and over and over. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example is trying to figure out where those blind spots are, and I do use that analogy a lot from stage because tiger sharks come up behind you quite often, they sneak up, so I use that a lot, and tiger sharks are large predatory sharks that love to kinda act like cats. It's almost like a cat, that hides in the background and you don't know it's there, uh, but they're good-sized
Do
sharks.
they attack? Do they attack?
No, they are very, very, very curious. Tiger sharks are, though, one of the largest sharks that you can interact with. I'd say it's the largest predatory shark you can interact with, mainly because you can interact with them in clear waters. So, a great white shark you often find in colder, murkier waters, uh, and the mistakes that you can make are too dramatic that, you might not see it and it'd be 10 feet away, and that happens. I've had that happen before, but a tiger shark in a clear setting, like, for example, if you're in the Bahamas where I dive a lot, or Bimini, those clear waters, you can see the shark as long as you can see it in front of you or look behind you, but they will come up and test you, but you just have to know how to deflect them, but they're not coming in you like as a torpedo just looking to bite you. That is a misnomer about, sharks in general, unless they are starving for some reason, but, there's plenty of fish that taste better than me in the sea.
Very interesting. I'm sure they have a lot of other choices to eat. Uh,
Yes.
it's
Yes, they do.
interesting. So definitely, I look forward to your conference information. I'm gonna post. So where can people find you, iShark, and how can they connect with you for conversation?
Well, they could, obviously Google or GPT, Kenneth Shark Kinney, but you could find me at kennethkinney.com, KENNETHKINNEY.com, and my contact info, all that good stuff is I'm easy to find, and, we'll be posting a lot more stuff on social as well.
A lot of great podcasts on your website as well, right? There's 400 of those. There's some great podcasts. I definitely recommend people to go and check out those podcasts.
Yeah, no, I've been blessed to have some great ones, and then like I said, also host, uh, Speakernomics, and speakers go through a lot of the same problems that, the other businesses that I work with. It's amazing that we go through a lot of the stuff we go through are the same problems over and over. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to include all the links below this video so people can click a button, and your LinkedIn profile and your website as well. They can click a button, and also a podcast. They can go check it out. I will definitely encourage, for our conversation. I learn a lot from you. There's so much to learn from you. We'll definitely encourage business leaders, business owners who are listening to us, reach out to you for conversation. Who knows where the conversation is going to go? But to click a button, reach out to you, and have a discussion. I learned tons from you. So I want to acknowledge your time. Thank you so much for time. Learn a lot, and I look forward to our future conversation.
absolutely.
All right,
Mahalo.
thanks. Okay.